The MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board meeting of May the 28th, 2015. We'll call the meeting to order. Amanda, I think we have a quorum. Do you agree? You agree. Let's begin by welcoming our newest member. Cecilia Robinson is from Ward 7, and this is her first meeting of the advisory board, but not her first MAPS meeting. She's already started this week with the Senior Wellness. We welcome you and invite any comment that you'd like to make. Great. Well, we're glad to have you. As most of you know, she's superintendent of schools at Millwood. And those of you that have spent your whole life being afraid of the superintendent, she says you don't need to do that here.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, those of you that intend to be naughty need to be afraid of her. Well, we're glad you're here, Cecilia. Welcome. Item 2 is the item where we approve the minutes. You've been furnished copies of the minutes of the April 23rd meeting. Are there additions or corrections? If not, shall we approve them?
I move that we approve minutes.
Been moved and seconded. We approve the minutes of the prior meeting. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. David, you're going to provide us with the revenue and expenditure report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is the revenue and expenditure report for MAPS 3 for the period ending April 30th, 2015. On the revenue side for the month, there's $8,314,695 in collections. For the fiscal year, there's $92,925,046 for a total program revenue of $509,668,406. On the expenditure side for the month, we have $4,518,848. Fiscal year of $36,524,061. Total program expenditures of $99,490,471. Then you also have your budget and obligations report for the period ending May 14th, 2015. You can see the expenditures and what's been obligated on those projects there. I might add that the interest isn't shown here because it's typically not available when we have to publish this report, but I do have information that the April interest was $244,705 and the May interest is $191.76. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Cecilia, I wanted to mention this to you. Michael Adams, to your right here, is kind of our official chief financial officer among our colleagues, and so I always ask him first if he wants to comment about this.
Don't make anything official.
No, nothing official. Any comments?
No, I don't have any comments. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else? Any questions about the or comments? Shall we receive the report?
I move.
Been moved and seconded that we receive the MAPS 3 revenue and expenditure report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It's adopted. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, the MAPS 3 Fairgrounds Phase 2 report. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, we've got a lot of stuff going on right now and several projects under construction, and this is one of them. And just wanted to bring you an update today on the progress of the Fairgrounds Expo building. So today we have Alan Brown from FSB to present this to us. So I'd like to invite him up.
Welcome, Alan.
Good morning. Back again. So we want to give you an update as of May on the Expo building project. Just refresh the site, the Expo building, and the parking area surrounded in the red dashed line. The contractor's working on the entire site. And also on the floor plan, I've added dashed lines which separate the building into areas. You might hear us refer to areas A through G, and those are the areas that we're talking about since it's such a large building that we've had to divide it. And then to give you an idea of the progress as of last week when it wasn't raining, this is looking across the to the northwest. I mean, the building's skewed, so we're looking directly at the entrance of the building there. And you can see the concrete columns that are in the sort of the concession toilet area between there and the expo hall itself. Then turning to the right, looking along the east wall of the new building, looking to the northwest, you can see the foundation coming out of the ground. That's the starter course for the concrete block walls, and that'll be the edge of the slab. And looking southwest, turning again back to the left, you're looking across the same area, the concession toilet area. You can see the utilities coming up. And now across the north side of the building, looking to the northeast, they're working from south to north, so the north side's a little bit behind the south. But you can see the grade beams and the reinforcing coming out for the walls. Now a little more detail, the electrical raceways under the slab, you can see there's, excuse me, they're being placed. There's the starter course, the concrete block coming up. And you've heard us talk about the GeoGrid fabric that's for the soil conditions. This is showing it going down. It goes over the entire building, sort of a safety measure. It wasn't required everywhere, but we did install it across the entire building because of the soil conditions. And then on top of the GeoGrid, they placed the aggregate. You can see they're starting to do that. Excuse me. And then completed backfill in the restroom area in Area D. And you can see how it covers all that up. You can see some conduit. Now this is now, we're starting to get above, we'll be getting above ground soon, so we're looking at architectural issues more, and this is the color sample for the, it's called burnished concrete masonry units. Two colors, if you remember the rendering, it's kind of a banded exterior and doesn't go into the interior in the lobby areas. I guess, and also the perimeter walls of the expo hall too. And it'll be a sort of a dark reddish color with a tan accent color. And it's called burnished, but it's kind of polished. It's smooth. It's not like a rough concrete block. And that is the finish. It won't be painted. That's the finish. Okay, so we have some other change order items today that I wanted to go over with you. The first, this would be change order number 6. The first item is concrete overage on piers, and that is due to the soil conditions when they placed the forms. The concrete expanded the forms out, and they required more concrete to reach the surface level. So that's for that. Number 2, installation of additional gravel, again caused by soil conditions. This is on the north portion of the building, the back of house portion, gravel backfill. And then removable unsuitable backfill. This is in utility trenches in the restroom areas. There may be more of that as they get into the finishing the utilities this month. And then the last item is extension of contract days due primarily to all the soil remediation that they've had to do. And this is what's called general conditions, which is their overhead, extra time, extra cost for their manpower on site, that type of thing. So the total change order today is $115,111.34. We also have an amendment, number 4. This is, again, finishing up the soil remediation for the building pad. There still will be some for trenches, but this is the most significant part. Number 1, additional excavation of the building pad. This is, again, the north part of the site. The grade was higher than it needed to be. And then once that was done, it was tested, and unsuitable soil was found and was removed. And number 3, suitable soil was brought back in to perform the subgrade. So total for amendment number 4 is $163,234. Now to summarize the construction budget, the current construction contract is $38,197,462.83. There's change order number 6 proposed, amendment number 4 proposed, The new construction contract amount will be $38,475,808.17. So you can see then below the, just to give you an update of where we are, with all change orders to date on the project, the contract amount will be 3.17% over the original contract amount. So that's not too bad, even though we've had quite a few soil issues on the project. And then to summarize the rest of the budget, there's the new construction contract amount. We have remaining projects. We've talked about the FF&E, Wi-Fi, security, and then the signage, site wayfinding and digital signage. So the total construction FF&E amount is $660,408.17 projected. Okay, and now to summarize the project schedule. There's original substantial completion date of February 29th. We had 2 change orders which gave additional time. Number 1 for asbestos abatement, number 2 for part of the soil remediation, a total of 29 days. So the current substantial completion date is March 29th, 2016. And then we now have a part of this change order number 6. I mentioned the calendar days. Primarily for soil remediation, we've been through 56 calendar days. The contractor submitted 112, and we analyzed it according to the critical path, and we are recommending approval of 56 calendar days, and they've accepted that. So the new substantial completion date will be May 24th, 2016. Any questions?
Point out to the board that we've moved to item 5 on the agenda to consider the resolution that has been provided to approve the change order 6 and amendment 4. So item 4 was the update, but now we're ready to consider the resolutions that are before us. One is to approve change order number 6 and amendment number 4. Bob, any recommendation from the subcommittee?
Yes, we considered the change order and amendment yesterday unanimously. Recommend approval. It's one of those things that you have to do. You really don't have a choice in terms of the soil remediation. If it takes extra concrete to fill out the piers, you have to do it. So we're still well within budget. As Alan indicated, we're just a little over 3% above the original contract price, with basically a 10% allowance that we would have through the whole project. So it's something, again, that has to be done, and we recommend approval.
I have a hard-hitting question. What's the difference between a change order and an amendment?
An amendment is something that we've already established prices for. And in this case, within the contract, we asked for line item costs for engineered fill and I think gravel. There's some items in there that have already got established prices. So all we have to do is increase or decrease those. A change order is something new, a new item that we have to negotiate a price for.
David, so tell me about alternate. What's the difference between alternate?
Well, an alternate is an item that at the time of bidding, you have it out there as something additional that you can choose to take or not. So I'm trying to think of, sometimes we'll have a project that will have additional millwork, some new cabinets or something, and that'll be an alternate. And if we come in with the base bid under budget, we can choose to take that alternate to get better finishes, and that's what we have on the wellness centers.
Alan, I have a question for you. I understand your explanation about the additional days and the cost for them and all that. I also know that we're on a schedule with regard to when they have the state fair.
Yes.
And all of that. Would you give us your view of how we're doing with regard to the overall schedule in terms of impacting fair and their ability to have the fair on time?
Right. Well, as you know, everybody's concerned about that. And for this year, the operator and contractor are working out accommodations for access and that type of thing. So that's being taken care of this year. And then, of course, 2016 is looming, and so that's something we've also talked about, and, what are the critical dates, and so everybody's aware of it, and we're trying to make sure that they pick up the pace. The weather and the soil really kind of slowed them down, so I think everybody's aware of that and working together to try to, accelerate this project. I'll give you one update real quick. Looking ahead a little bit, the steel for the building should be arriving first 2 weeks in June, and should be going up shortly thereafter. This is the tall base, so you'll be seeing something above ground soon.
That's great. Any other questions for Alan?
I'm just curious if there's
Yes, sir.
been any weather impacts, severe type, that have caused any damage to what's already been done, or?
Well, I don't think there's anything severe, just normal, a lot of rain, a lot of water. They've had to do what they call dewatering constantly, and it has set them back, every time they, for instance, approving the concrete masonry, you can't do that when it's wet in the rain. So that's been rescheduled twice. So it's moved back, but everybody, like I said, is working hard to try to recover.
Will those be additional delays we might see in coming months?
The 56 days is everything to date. So
But
once
the rain delays, are there going to be additional rain delays?
There could be some additional, but the specifications allow for a certain number of days for each month that are built in there. But there could be some additional days come up. But this has taken us to a point, I believe, to the first of this month so far.
I just want to correct what I said. 56 days is as of the end of April, so the month of May, there will be some that will probably be coming forward, but we don't know yet.
Did you get a second on the motion? I was second the motion.
All right. I didn't hear a motion, but we're on item 5. But you wanted to make a motion to approve this? All right. And Mike has seconded. All right. We have a motion before us on item 5 on the agenda to recommend the approval of the resolution for change order number 6 and amendment number 4. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution approving the change order is adopted.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 6, David.
Thank you. Item 6 is authorize staff to purchase and install the Wi-Fi and security system devices and cabling for the MAPS 3 Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 2 New Expo Building, $875,000, project M3-F002. This is coming to you because we've shown you through the past months in preliminary reports and in final plans, and even today in this presentation, an amount that was built into the budget for the Wi-Fi and for the security systems, and that equaled $799,000. We were fortunate that the bids for this project came in favorable, and we have some money that we can spend in addition to what we had planned before. So we've raised the amounts of the Wi-Fi and security system to $875,000. So that's why I brought it to you, so that you'll know and that you can authorize us to increase that from what has been shown through previous presentations. And this comes unanimously approved from the subcommittee.
So is that going to increase capability of the Wi-Fi, or what are you really getting out of that?
I'm trying to remember. I know that it increases the ability for connectivity. Alan, can you help me with the increase on the Wi-Fi?
I'll try to. I know that the State Fair is developing a system, Wi-Fi, that'll be, campus-wide, and so that's one reason why it was separated. And so that's just the cost of the devices to create this type of system that will allow everybody to be using cell phones, like the Chesapeake Arena at the same time. And it's an area, I forget what the name of it is, it's a special Wi-Fi system that allows that to happen. I'd like to point also that this is a cost for what we call devices and the wiring. All of the what we call infrastructure The conduit is in the construction contract, so it's kind of split between the two.
Thank you. Bob, you had a presentation on that?
Yes, just to amplify on that a little bit, as Alan said, the State Fairgrounds already has a Wi-Fi system and is upgrading it, and this system will be compatible with what otherwise works on the Fairgrounds campus. And it really is designed and has to be a relatively sophisticated system so that you can accommodate, I don't know how many thousands of people it might be in that expo building at one time, or on the fairgrounds during the fair. You could have, I don't know, 8,000 or 10,000 people out there, all of whom have at least one mobile device that they're using. So it has to be a system that has a very high capacity, but it also has to integrate with what is already there, and that's being coordinated with the fairground.
Any other questions for Alan or Bob or David?
It comes with a recommendation of the Fairgrounds Subcommittee would move its approval.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. We authorize the staff to purchase and install the Wi-Fi security system as described in item 6. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The authorization is approved. That brings us to item number 7, David, the Whitewater.
Item 7 is a presentation on the Whitewater facility, and we're really glad to bring you these updates. What's going on out there is really exciting. So we got Jeffrey Guston here from S2O to tell you about it.
Good
morning, Alan. Just to kick off, with 20 acres of site between here and the off-site bar site, all exposed to rain, it's been a tough month for this project. That said, we've made progress, and we continue to do so. So I'll give you a 30-day update on where we're at right now with the project. We've got a schedule that we update every month, and this is a bar chart just showing you where we're at in main progress. As you see, the items to the far left of the page are pretty much mobilization, early site work, infrastructure, whatnot. As you get to the middle section of this chart, you're into the buildings, into the channels, and then towards the end, it's the change orders that have been issued over the last few months. Long story short, we're about 47% complete on the project. That's as far as progress, and about 50% as far as our time. So we're tracking about 3% behind schedule right now, and that is all attributed to the last 30 days, essentially. Apologize for the next couple photos. They're going to look like a disaster relief portfolio, but this is what we were facing. You can see in the top left-hand corner the pump station essentially a month ago, and then 3 weeks later we're completely submerged in water. That pump station in the bays right now was holding about 5.5 feet of water, and we're just constantly pumping this out. Another picture just to the south of that, this is the conveyor system again. The small picture is about a month ago, and then a couple weeks later, basically that entire basin has filled up with water and continues to be dewatered as we experience the rains. Let's go back 1 second. One thing to note, though, with the rain happening, you can see, though, on the small picture on the 17th there, we just had started building the inlet structure for the conveyor, and even with the rain, you can see there's substantial concrete being poured and completed as that wall connects back into the pump station. It's taking a step back, looking also to the east, back in the pump station in the background, looking at the bottom channel. That is all water, about 2.5 feet of water throughout the channel system here. Looking back to the northwest, you're also seeing the water all the way back up to the first drop. What's of interest here is, as well, as we basically backfilled all these walls. You can see here in the foreground about 2.5 feet of exposed channel wall, and that is about a 14-foot high wall system, so we have significantly backfilled along these channels over the last 30 days. Going to the channels itself, small picture, early April, this was our last significant slab pour, and the walls on the bigger photo around that, so there's completion about 3 weeks later of the bottom slab and the walls. This is pretty much the remainder of the bottom pool. The large picture was taken from the top of the abutment structure for the bridge. If you remember from the overall plan, that bridge is essentially the divider between the channels as they come down and dump into the open, large bottom channel. So we are making the turn and moving back around the individual channels to the northeast. This is that pour essentially to the left, looking down channel. The concrete structure in the background right below the boom is essentially that abutment structure for the bridge that I just mentioned. This is that last slab pour with unistrut, the last slab pour essentially before the channels bisect. You can see in the background here, the crane is set up right dead center on the page for the main building. We're looking at essentially May 12th, and only a few pieces of steel to be seen there. But that's probably, as I'll show you, go through the rest of the presentation, most significant progress has been on the main building steel. Just a few more slides on the channel itself. These had videos in it, but we're going to kind of bypass that. I wanted to show this to kind of give you an understanding of one of the items that's actually in the change order in front of you, and that's the increase of the concrete compressive strength, essentially from 4,000 to 5,000, only on the bottom channel slab for the channel system. And this is essentially to accommodate the unistrut system. We talked about this before with the rapid blocks. They anchor into a steel channeling system. You can see that on the slide, essentially going about every 19 inches across the channel. They're pouring the concrete in between each one of these sections and then have to finish it. And we're trying to get a finish out there that is not, so to speak, like a warehouse slick finish, but something that's smooth enough that someone spills out of a boat, gets tossed, and goes down and brushes their face or their arm against the bottom of the concrete. You're not going to get abrasions. So we're trying to get a better finish here. So the end result was to increase the compressive strength, which reduces your aggregate and your workability, increases your workability. So you have here pouring through, and this is the method we're finishing, and it's a pretty bad slide, but what you can see, there's two sticks there with a roller, an 8-foot roller between the two. It's a roller screed, and instead of hand troweling this, these guys are, it's an actuated motorized roller that basically they pull back across the unistruts using the unistrut as a leveling device. They pull it back and finish it and then bull float it at the end. So we're now happy with the surface that we're getting on the slab, and that surface will be continuing all the way up through to the upper channel. Just the last slides on the channel here. This is, as I said, from a bridge structure. This is the turn. This would be the first section of channel you see on Phillips Avenue. From here, it turns east, and then we start working our channels back up to the upper pond. This is the bridge, excuse me, the River Light Pier Foundation, which was approved in the change order previous months. One of the few things that had shown significant progress over the last 30 days has been this pier structure. We had approved 2 River Light poles to go in on the north bank. This is the first one. This went in 2 weeks ago. The second one was scheduled to be poured yesterday. We got canceled by rain, so it's probably going to be today or tomorrow. But by the end of the week, we will have completed the pier River Light structures. This is panoramic looking back again from the bridge structure to the east. You'll see on the far left-hand side of the sheet is essentially the competition channel as it turns and goes back east. On the right is essentially the bottom pool working its way back to the pump station. Then on the far right, you're going to see essentially the steel structure for the main building. So getting to the main building, about a month ago, we were pre-slab pour on the main building on the 17th of April. May 12th, here we are on the steel. As of today, essentially 3 weeks of steel erection. We're complete with all the structural steel, all the bar joists. Decking is scheduled to go in next week. So by the end of next week, we should be basically done with all the structural steel on the main building. A couple more shots of the main building steel. Looking back from the prow to the main building, the significance of this photo is to look to the right. You see some equipment there. That's where the rafting building's going in. We have made some progress there. Foundations are complete for the rafting building. Steel is on site for the rafting building. So we hope by mid to late June we should have all the steel erected on the rafting building as well. Here's the foundations again for the rafting building. Before I get to this progress report, one thing I didn't mention is the kayak building. Of course, that was added back as a change order. We have been focusing on getting the grade up to slab level for that. We are now at that level. Then we're starting foundations on the kayak building, which again is on the far east side of the site. Probably within 2 weeks, steel should be on site by the end of June, and then early July, we should start seeing steel construction on all 3 buildings at that point. Then a 30-day forecast, pretty much an overview of what we've already said. Excavation, all the excavation at this point is pretty much fine grading the channels all the way up to the upper pond. We've got about 40% of the import from Oliver Park on site. We've had limited amount of import over the last 30 days coming in. Again, basically due to the rains. Most of the backfill coming in is, most of the import coming in is for backfill on the pump station as well as the channel walls. Utilities, we've completed the OGE primary line along 6th Street. They're now moving along Phillips and then all the way down 5th Street, which will be our last primary feed to the kayak building and the pump house. Water and fire lines are just about complete. The buildings, again, structural steel on the main buildings, all but done. Raft storage foundations are complete. Steel will start soon. Kayak building, we just talked about that. Pump station, we are complete with everything to the first level. We are starting to frame out the second floor for the pump station, so we'll see that over the next few weeks, and then going vertical on the second floor of that pump station. Channels, we're essentially to the point where we have turned the corner, and now we'll be working up channel. Everything on the remaining channels will be unistrut pours, so we'll have unistrut all the way up, essentially 2,000 linear feet all the way to the upper pond. Once we make this completion of the turn, we'll continue on the bridge structure, the inner island abutment structure, so that'll go in as well. We've been working with the Boathouse Foundation, who is privately funding the rotary stage, which goes on the interior island. That's been approved, and we'll actually be pouring the foundations on that within the next 2 weeks. And then lastly, as far as equipment's concerned, we've received all the owner advance procured filtration equipment. The conveyor system is all on site, and the remaining piece is the pumps. The pump tubes, cables, and controls will be here within a week to 10 days, and then the pumps themselves are scheduled for October 1st. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Jeffrey, I think you were describing yesterday the process they've had to go through with dewatering and starting over and then another rain and dewatering.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I'd say the optimism on site is at an all-time low right now. They go out, and they're out there working every day, and you guys know the weather pattern you've experienced. You'll get a rain, a flash in the afternoon. They'll spend a day and a half drying the site out, dewatering it, turning the soil. Fortunately, again, we have a lot of sand on the site, so it does dry out pretty quickly. They'll get to that point, they're ready to start doing something else, it'll rain again, and they'll repeat that cycle. And that said, there's been progress made. I mean, not as much as we would have liked to see, but we did have 2 channel pours in the last 30 days. Yesterday, we had a rain at 1:30. We were supposed to be pouring the pump station wall as well as the pier foundation, as I mentioned, on the last river light. We had to cancel the river light because it's so deep and it's really in a saturated area. But they're pouring while it's raining out there on the pump station wall. So we are making progress. Again, the steel made a lot of progress this month, but the rains have certainly slowed things down.
And I guess one thing we've proven is that the channel does hold water.
It certainly does hold water. It certainly holds mud, too.
Other questions? David, should we ask Jeffrey to stay up as we move to the next item on the change orders? Jeffrey, if you'll stay with us for a minute, we're going to move to item 8. David, you want to tell us about the proposed change order?
Yes, sir. Item 8 is recommend resolution approving change order number 8 for MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Phase 3 Whitewater Facility, increase of $199,156.21, project M3-R004/WC-0817/SC-0912. This is change order, and the major items on this, item number 1 is additional concrete slab. What this is in the main building. We originally had it so that it could be finished out at a later date, and that upper floor would just have the metal decking that would be up there. The subcommittee thought that it was a very good idea to go ahead and pour that concrete floor that's on the second floor at this time, because it would cost less and less chance of concrete getting down into the spaces, and it's just a better time to do this. And Fortunately, we have the money still in contingency, so that's a little over $78,000 on that. Then the bridge design modification is $13,500. If you remember, we changed the bridge from that custom bridge to a standard off-the-shelf bridge, but the bridge had to be extended about 30 inches because of the distance across the channel. Then there, item 5 was a retaining wall modification. In the plans, there was a detail for retaining wall, but it did not extend far enough to cover this one retaining wall, plus it did not meet the requirements for the soil conditions in that area. So we had to do a modification on the detail for this retaining wall. That's $72,583. This is a retaining wall that comes off of the pump house. Then also item number 6 is channel slab revisions, $29,221.56. This has to do with what Jeffrey was talking about, the way that the concrete gets finished between the unistrut. And the unistrut is that material where the rapid blocks will be connected to. This allows it to be more fluid and be finished much better in between all that steel and the unistrut. I hope that describes it. A lot of technical words in there.
Michael Adams, does the subcommittee have a recommendation for us?
Oh, yes, we discussed this yesterday, and this comes with the recommendation of the subcommittee.
Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll move to approve the resolution.
Is there a second? Is there further discussion, further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved for change order number 8. That takes us to item 9 on the agenda, another proposed change order for the river. David?
Item 9 is recommend resolution approving change order number 4 for MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Phase 2, Project 2 improvements, increase of $129,748.22, Project M3-R005A. If you recall, this is Phase 2, pardon me, and Phase 2 is the part of the project that is the lane marking system, additional docks, sound system, some additional lighting, and yes, thank you, the judging towers, just the additional pieces that help make the race course much better. So if you remember, roughly a year ago, we had another one of these large storms while we were still in construction, and we had a change order to do some improvements. It was a small change order because there was some damage, but once we got out and saw the actual damage where some of the cables had been pulled out of the bank that were underwater, they'd been pulled up, the cable had balled up and was wrapped around the I-35 bridge. It became a much more extensive repair job than what we thought. And the timing on this is because the people that had to help us were from Hungary. They brought in divers, and we've been negotiating this change. And this reflects a lot like, Nathaniel, what you were asking about change order. This was a negotiated price. So it started much higher than what it is now, and we've negotiated it down to the 129. With that in mind, the completion date extension is because of the judging tower. If you go down I-35, you probably now recognize that judging tower that is between the bridges. And it lay dormant for quite a while because we could not get the permits from Federal Highway Administration and from Oklahoma Department of Transportation for several months. And then we also had difficulty getting OG&E easements approved and agreed upon to go to those towers because it was going through some of that ODOT property. So that's the reason for the extension. It's a no-cost extension, but because it's a contractual obligation, we have to put it in a change order to extend the time, recognizing that it's not the contractor's fault. So I hope that clears it up.
I'd like for you to make one other explanation for Cecilia's benefit and to remind all of us. All of these change orders obviously create changes, but they do not increase the overall budget that's been approved by the council. And would you make that
That's right. And
explanation?
each project has a contingency amount assigned to it. Then the overall program has a contingency. These changes that we have seen today and that any others that we might see are still within the project contingency. So that, as Mr. McDaniel said, they stay within the project budget that is allocated. Now, there has been, in some cases, some moving of some money between phases, and the Whitewater is a good example, that the subcommittee decided that it was better to build it as a A1 top-notch facility, so they took Phase 4 money out of their project, or program, if you will, out of the river projects, and moved that Phase 4 into Phase 3, and that went all the way through council and got council approval. So what we try to do is keep all these monies within the specific projects. So, for instance, the river monies stay within the river, the streetcar stays within the streetcar, and the fairground stays within the fairgrounds. So this is not additional money that we're having to find per se. It is contingency money.
So it is governed like school bond money, so I did get that part, so that's good.
Yeah.
And because of, I think, some of the phases that are happening with the Senior Wellness Center, I think there's been some conversation that I missed last month about taking money from others, so thank you, though.
You bet. All right, we have the, under item 9, we have a resolution recommending approving change order number 4. Michael, do you have a motion about that?
Yes, I move approval.
Is there a second? Further discussion? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. That brings us to item number 10 on the agenda, David.
Item 10 is recommend resolution approving final plans and specifications to be advertised for bids for MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center Number 1, project M3-H002. Very happy today to bring you final plans for the first wellness center. You know, it's been a long time coming, and I'm also glad that Ryan Eshelman is here to give you a presentation on what's included in these final plans and what you can expect for this first wellness center.
Welcome, Ryan.
Good morning to you all. It's an exciting day to be at this milestone, a long time in coming. This is an update on where we are. We're prepared to bring this project to the market and bid it. Just a brief overview. I know you've seen this project on several occasions. The project started out with a programming effort working with the budget, with the MAPS team, with the operator, with our consultant, Lifespan Design Studio, to determine what elements, spaces were most important to include in the project to support the operations here and the programming for the senior users. And that included everything from social spaces to fitness and wellness spaces, multi-purpose spaces for meetings and activities, again, intended to provide a program for full body health, mind, body, and social connectivity. Just to refresh your memory on the site, this is Northwest 112th and Rockwell. North is actually to your right, so we are in the northeast corner of this piece of property that Putnam City Baptist Church owns, and the property for the senior center is being transferred, being sold to the city for construction of the project. So you can see it has access from Rockwell. It will also link into the driveway that the church has. And we'll include the parking there to the south of the building itself, and some outdoor amenities. Off the page to the top, you can see it in this image, there is a detention facility, so all the stormwater on this project will be detained in that area. As we've discussed this week, has called attention to the need for those kinds of provisions. So that's a quick overview of the site plan. Within the building itself, you've seen this floor plan before as well, but just generally the purple spaces are the fitness and health and activity spaces. So you can see we have a full gymnasium with ample apron space for a walking course around that gym. You'll see an equipped fitness area with the cardio and weight training facilities. You'll see our hybrid fitness pool, and then the supporting locker rooms and restroom spaces. There's also a social lounge associated with the fitness spaces to encourage connecting and visiting. You can also see an aerobics studio, which will support a variety of classes. The plan is essentially an L shape, with the elbow being the lobby. That's the heart of the facility where you arrive. There'll be someone there to greet you. There'll be signage and media, soft seating, table seating, quiet seating, access to outdoor space, a small cafe for coffee and prepackaged foods. There's also access to a small diagnostic and preventative care clinic with a few private exam rooms. And then the green spaces that you see extending along the corridor, those are multi-purpose and social spaces. So those will be used with reconfigurable furniture in most of those spaces for classrooms, meetings, clubs, third-party groups. The Rotary Club could come in here and have a luncheon. There's lots of functions that could occur here. And there's some dedicated space for arts and crafts, billiards, and of course an administrative suite for the staff. So that's a quick tour of the facility. You've seen this image before. This is kind of the approach as you pull off of Rockwell onto the property. You can see the main arrival and that tall lobby form. Inside the lobby, when you arrive, this space I've made the analogy to a modern hotel lobby. There's lots of things going on there. People visiting, interacting socially. They may be reading or on the Wi-Fi system on their iPad. They may be having a cup of coffee from the cafe. They may be visiting at the check-in desk, checking signage for activities of the day, classes, watching the news or the weather, all sorts of things that are going on here. As we mentioned, social connectivity is a big part of this, the vision here. So when we walk in the front door, we want people to connect with others and feel comfortable in lingering in the facility, not just attending a program or a class or exercise and leaving. This is another social space around the fitness area. Again, seating, lots of glass so you can see into those spaces. As is mentioned before, there'll be an opportunity for people who have never engaged in fitness activity to try for the first time, and having this kind of visibility allows people to see into those spaces and over a period of weeks or months to gain confidence that that's something that I'd like to try. I see somebody of my age and activity level that's exercising in there, and I'd like to try that. And the fitness pool, again, this is a pool to be kind of all things to all people. One pool works well with our budget and the operating expenses that are associated with a pool. It's warm water. It has variable depth, so there's a standing portion. There's a 6-foot portion where you can be fully buoyant. It has lane markings for limited lane swimming. It'll support classes, all sorts of activities, and it has access from steps, ramp, and lift, so all users will be able to utilize this facility. Our construction and FF&E budget is $8.6 million with a project contingency additive to that. Our final cost estimate prepared in February indicates that with the alternates that we've made a part of the project, that we are just within that budget, and we'll be hoping that on bid day we have great news and that this all comes to fruition here. I mentioned alternates as a part of working to get within that budget. The estimate reflects the base bid project. The alternates have been added to give us flexibility on bid day, to add some features and amenities and finishes that were desirable within the project, as well as some items that the operator had requested be included, but the budget projections did not support that. I want to make it clear that the base bid project is a fully functional senior center. We have not compromised spaces or finishes. If we don't take any of the alternates, the building will be able to operate well. These just offer us improvements, better durability, less maintenance. Some of these items are help with the operations and the long-term maintenance of the facility. So just a quick highlight of what these constitute. They're packaged into 8 clusters, and the city has the ability to accept or reject any or all of these in any combination. Alternate 1 is essentially finishes. You see some upgraded options for flooring and tile, hardware, countertops, an operable partition. So those are, again, desired finishes that we'd like to incorporate in the project if the budget allows. Alternate 2 includes some projection screens, some amenities for the gymnasium, and some AV elements. And the balance of the alternates include everything from some additional parking spaces, Full LED lighting, the project currently has about 75% roughly LED lighting. This would allow the entire project to be LED lit. Some raised garden beds for community gardening activities, additional millwork and day lockers, some additional fitness and cafe equipment. You can see those items listed there. Our schedule moving forward, next week we will present this to City Council for approval to go to bid with opening the end of June 30th, which would allow a contractor to be able to mobilize in early August. Expecting a construction duration of approximately 14 months. That puts us kind of end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter in 2016 when the facility would be complete. And that is a quick overview on where we are. Again, we're excited to be at this point, and I certainly welcome your questions about the project.
Thank you, Tom. Just that, as Ryan mentioned, it has been a long time coming, and we're really excited, and just want to thank Bill Fleming and the folks at Healthy Living, Inc. It's been a long process, but one that I think our first wellness center will be one that the community in this city will be very, very proud of, and I'm still eligible to go, as some of you are, so when we do open next year, and I want to thank Ryan as well. He's been great to work with as well, and again, we're enthusiastic, excited, and ready to move forward. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I'd like to move the resolution.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Item 11 is recommend resolution approving preliminary report for MAPS 3 Transit Modern Streetcar Mainline Project, Project M3-S007. Another exciting time and quite a milestone for us on another MAPS project is for the streetcar preliminary report that we have today. And I'd like to invite Doug Smith up here. He's from Jacobs, and he will give you a summary of what's in this preliminary report.
Mr. Chairman, good morning, and board members. I'm a little jealous this morning because all these other projects are ahead of where we are, but we're catching up. So
Great.
Anyway, hopefully one of these days we'll be talking about construction as well. So what we have is the streetcar project is really composed of three major parts: the vehicles, the maintenance facility, and of course the main line is the biggest part. Today we have a preliminary report just on the main line, and I'll update you briefly on the other pieces at the end of the talk. So anyway, let's get into it. First of all, we updated the subcommittee yesterday on, well, actually we've been updating them for the last 4 or 5 months on the status of the preliminary design. And this was our update to them yesterday. So from April meeting, we were talking to the subcommittee. I apologize for that, but because we weren't here talking to you last month. But anyway, what the report does is it sets the design criteria. It locks our horizontal alignment down so that we can start right-of-way, we can start doing our geotech borings in the street, we can start ordering that rail so we're ready so that we can have our rail ready when our mainline contractor is hired to start putting it in. We need a pothole for utilities, find out how deep they are so we can miss them. And of course, we need to confirm where our rail is going to be in the traveled traffic lanes. It also gives us a check on our cost budget. I'll show you where we're at a little bit later on that. And of course, it authorizes us to start the final design process. What is in the report is, of course, design criteria, and we have a map that shows where the stops are. There's 22 of them shown on the map. We have a structural evaluation of the Bricktown Bridge that we need to make sure that the loading is okay for the vehicle over that. There's a discussion on the traction power substations. That's what powers the main line. And there's information on the overhead contact system. That's the overhead wire that would, of course, power the vehicle. Utilities, there's an inventory in there of both public and private, so we could do a cost estimate on that. And there's analysis of the traffic, which tells us what modifications we might need to make to the intersections, if we need a transit-only phase to the signals, or if we need a new signal somewhere to account for the movement of the vehicle. Also, it helped us confirm that our headways between the stops, getting from one stop, or with the vehicles coming in 10-minute headways, which was one of our goals, if that's going to work. There's an inventory of ADA ramps, so that as we go through and work on the various intersections, we can get those fixed. There's a discussion on rights-of-way that we might need to acquire, especially on some of these corners where we're clipping the corners and we need to get some private property there. And then, as I mentioned, a cost estimate. So here are the issues that are really in the report related to this approval. There's the route alignment. So we really need to lock that down so that we can proceed with final design of that route. We need to confirm where our stops are going to be. We have a little bit of flexibility, but not much at this point moving forward. And also there's a consideration of turnback options, which is an operational flexibility item for the system. And there's a recommendation in the report to consider putting one at 4th or 6th. We don't have it in the budget, and we don't have it in our cost estimate, but the recommendation is to consider studying that a little further. There is an update of the min and max off wire. That issue isn't resolved at this time because we need to work with Innoconn, the vehicle supplier, more about the battery performance. So we're still working on that, but there at least is a presentation of what we think that configuration would look like. And we need to confirm the traffic management approaches and then, of course, the cost reviews. Now, here's the stop map. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mark Dorn, who is our design manager on the project, to take us through this part of it.
Morning. So as Doug mentioned, we've been through the effort to establish the alignment, and what we mean by that is really establishing where the tracks will run in which travel lane. In final design will be more refined in actually establishing, down to the inches of where the track will be. We have identified all the candidate stop locations. Final design will refine these more down, again, to more specific, site-specific design, to fit design conditions in the field. We are working on a couple minor shifts. For instance, we met with Automobile Alley yesterday, and they're requesting we look at a slight adjustment to the stop at Broadway and 8th, and then the Transportation Subcommittee yesterday, they suggested to revisit the one on 11th near Hudson, currently proposed at Hudson. We might look at an option to locate that at Walker. But pretty much we're set with the stop locations. Doug mentioned some of the studies that we'll be conducting over the next month or two. One is what we call a turnback, and this is the ability for a streetcar to pull off of the revenue line and to reverse direction, essentially, for whatever operational need. These are operational conveniences. They're nice to have, but they have a price tag, and the Transportation Subcommittee and MBARC has asked us to look at this possible add-in, and where would at least what we would do is program the ability to include a turnback in the future, if that is needed, if we can't afford it in this first phase of the streetcar program. So we're looking at 2 candidate locations, one at 4th Street and one at 6th Street, and this is just an example of what the turnback may look like at 4th Street. The blue line is the actual turnback, coming from the eastbound 4th to southbound on Robinson. The peach line that you see there coming from the east and turning south on Robinson, that would be the future extension to the Health Science Center. But we'll be looking at, different criteria. What is the best location? Cost is certainly a big consideration. How it might affect traffic, operations, and parking, and that sort of thing. And then we believe our strategy will be to create a bid alternate in the design package for when it's constructed. So then we would exercise that bid alternate if we know the budgets are aligned with our overall budget. So, and then the other analysis that is going on right now is to identify the extent of the off-wire, the wireless segments. The vehicles are designed to have a hybrid battery operation, and that is specifically driven by the alignment going underneath the railroad bridges into and out of Bricktown. And so what we want to do is make sure we're, the vehicles that requires a premium on purchasing the vehicles for the hybrid technology. So we want to make sure we're capturing the return on that investment by maximizing the amount by reducing the amount of OCS wires, the overhead power lines. So that analysis is going on. We have made a determination, an estimate as the design team on what is the maximum extent of that wireless, but it's really up to the vehicle manufacturer and what the battery performance can achieve. And so that we expect to have that feedback in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then it will be an iterative process in order to identify exactly how much can we get out of this. But so this is part of our criteria that we've been will be assessing, but again, it's largely dependent on the battery modeling by the vehicle. One key consideration is, in our professional opinion, given limited amount of experience with the hybrid battery operated streetcars, is the safety concern. That we feel pretty strongly that right now it's key to make the operation as simple as possible, and we would like to minimize the number of times the pantograph, which is the mechanism that reaches up and makes contact with the wire, that will go up and down in the wireless and wired sections. So we want to minimize the number of times it does each trip. And so that has led us to our recommendation and our estimate of the wireless segment. As you see here, the blue dashed lines is to extend that minimum amount as much as possible. We feel on Robinson it's very, it's a safe estimate because the alignment is southbound into downtown and it's primarily downhill, and so with the regenerative braking characteristic of the battery-operated streetcar, the braking and the downhill motion actually puts energy back into the streetcar, and so we feel that will be achievable. But how much can we how much of the wireless we can achieve on Reno and Hudson will be largely dependent upon the vehicle manufacturer and the projected life cycle of the battery itself. So, and this is just a picture of what the OCS may look like. We are conscious of some neighborhoods' concerns about the OCS wires, but we feel we can make it as unobtrusive as possible. That will be our goal. So, and then just, Doug mentioned the traffic analysis we've conducted. Through that, we've confirmed that we want to maintain the number of travel lanes on 10th Street. And on Broadway as well, we want to maintain 2 southbound lanes. That is consistent with the traffic analysis that was done years ago when they converted to the angle parking. But there will be, our recommendation is to convert the angle parking that's on the east side of the street to traditional parallel parking. This allows for safer operation for the streetcar, and it also allows to reintroduce a second northbound lane, which has some operational benefits for the streetcar and for the general traveling public. So, Doug, I think you're next.
So every time we have one of these design deliverables, we like to take a look at our budget and see how everything's tracking. And the center column there where it says currently approved budget, that is the budget that the City Council approved. As you can see, the bottom line there is about $128.8 million. So that's what's authorized for the overall project, and that includes Phase 2. So if you can see the horizontal line on the slide there, just up from the bottom, everything below that is in the Phase 2 part that's being reserved for a scope of work that hasn't been defined yet. But the Phase 1 part of it is essentially everything above the line, and that's what we are now working on and giving an update on. So if you look at the column that says current status and breakdown of current status, there are some updates now that we have as a result of the bids that we received on the vehicles, and also our cost estimate that we have for the main line. So in the very right column, you can see a variance column, and that explains how we're tracking against the various elements of the project. And as we would expect, everything by line item isn't tracking exactly as planned, but we want to keep an eye on the bottom line and how everything is tracking against that. So the current status is that we are $1.5 million under budget, and as we move forward through the design phase of the maintenance facility and the main line, we then have to see how all that is tracking against that total. So we wanted to let you know some of the things that we're keeping a careful eye on the main line as we move towards a 60% design. And that is, there's several deducts that we're looking at. First of all, the OCS spacing in Hudson, that's the portion where we go to maintenance, where we leave south of Reno and go out of revenue service. The OCS poles there, we have to coordinate with the park project to the east and then the road project on Hudson, which is doing the west side. So we're working on that pole spacing to see if we can reduce that, and that would be a significant savings to the streetcar project. There's also, as Mark mentioned, if we're able to achieve some of the maximum off-wire and remove some of that overhead wire, then we'll have a reduction in costs there. And then the traction power substations, we'd like to be able to minimize those, but we can't really tweak that until we have that final off-wire configuration figured out. So that's something we want to look at. And private utilities, we have a $2 million budget allocation for what the city might have to pay for private utility, not public, but private utilities relocations. And that budget is looking very solid right now. We're hoping that it's more than enough. And then if we need to, we have a terminal plan for Bricktown where we have a pocket track where the vehicle could pull over and dwell there just to give the operator some time to stage and, make the route back up to Midtown. And we can do some messing around with the switches there and maybe eliminate a couple of things there. So as with some of the other projects, we're starting to think about alternates and things we can do to make the budget work. And that's what that's all about. Now, additions include turnbacks, which Mark told you about, 4th Street, 6th Street, that kind of thing. It's a flexibility item. If we need to start combining poles to minimize the amount of clutter in the street because we have a light pole right next to an overhead power pole, can we combine those? That's an extra cost. And then if the public utilities relocations turn out to be more than we expected, that is an upward pressure on the cost budget. So all in all, we feel good about the budget, where things are right now, and as I said there in the note, we're going to be diligently evaluating those costs as we progress towards the 60%. Now, the next steps are, as we've mentioned several times now, we need to get this off-wire configuration with Enacon nailed down. So that's our first course of business. We need to look at these combined poles. We need to look at our traffic preemption priorities at the signals and get those phases worked out. We have potholing to do and geotech borings to take. We have lots of utilities coordination to do on both the public and private side, and those meetings with all those various stakeholders are happening on a weekly basis. In fact, we have 2 or 3 of those meetings this afternoon. I can't even get to all of them because we have people, we have to break up our team and just get to all these various meetings. But when we're talking to AT&T and OG&E and Veolia, as well as city, water, sewer, and stormwater, you can imagine how much coordination we have to do there. So there's a lot of that ongoing. I mentioned the rail procurement. We need to get to work on pre-qualifying our mainline contractors, so we need to work on a special questionnaire for bidders because we do want to pre-qualify that list of potential constructors. And then, of course, we need to get on our 60% design drawings. Other items in the project I mentioned at the beginning, we are working on negotiating the contract with Enacon. We have a version to them right now for them to comment on. So working on that, and of course we mentioned the battery, the cost of the batteries and the life of the batteries. We need to get that confirmed. The storage and maintenance facility, we have some value engineering going on right now. We're trying to get that right sized and get that closer to the budget we have. We're coming in higher than we had hoped on that, so we're trying to tighten that up, and we hope to bring that to you next month. See if we can get that on the schedule. And then the preliminary report and drawings would be June 2015, so that would be next month. As far as operations, we're working with Jason and Embark on several different things. He's working on the FAIR method. We're working with him on an operations plan, which explains a lot of the basic, how the system is going to work. And then there's a safety and security plan, which we have drafted, which ties in with getting the vehicle through design and into commissioning, and all are tied in with the various safety issues and sign-offs that need to be done with the transit project. All right, so that's all we had for you today, and you have the agenda item in front of you, so happy to answer any questions.
Cecilia?
I'm only about an hour and 15 minutes into this, so I apologize if you've already reviewed this before. Are the terminal points, is that where your parking would be, like commuter parking? Because, and this is just me thinking out loud here, is I think the overall purpose is to move traffic through the city through these points, correct? Maybe?
You have your mic on.
Do I have a mic on? I do. Sorry. Can you not hear me?
Go ahead.
But in looking at it, I guess my question is, when you talked about reducing traffic, I'm saying, well, how are we reducing traffic if there's not a point on the outskirts for people to park?
All right, so
It might be on here, and I don't see it.
So it's not like a light rail where
Okay.
you might have a terminal that you could stop and get on. It's not set up that way. It's more of an urban system where the 22 stops, people freely move in and off of the system.
Right, that's what I thought. So that's
And so when we say a terminal point, what we mean is really where the route starts and stops. And so we have a Midtown terminal, which is up by the hospital, and there's a place where it's out of the traffic where 1 or 2 vehicles can stop and wait and get on their schedule, and the dispatch can say, okay, it's car number 1, it's time for you to go, start your route. And so it's just a way to provide flexibility to the system where you're not in a traveled lane and you're not backing up traffic. And we want to provide the same thing in Bricktown, out on Joe Carter, so that there's a place to pull out and just basically stage, and it might be an important feature for sporting events or things like
Right.
that. So it's flexibility on either end of the system.
But the traffic that you refer to is the train traffic and not street traffic.
Well, both have been considered because the train moves, with the street traffic. So when we model it, we model all of that together. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it functions more or less like a bus would, but in some cases, when the streetcar negotiates a turn, we have to introduce a different phase in the streetcar, in the traffic signal system, like a special, the whole traffic signal will go all red for all movements, and then the streetcar will come through on its own. And so that adds some, small impacts to the capacity of the traffic signal. So that's what we model and make sure everything still is working within an acceptable level of service.
But the purpose of it is not to reduce traffic during the arts festival.
Are you asking about the overall purpose of the streetcar project?
Right. And it may not be you, I'm just asking for my own edification, is if we're going to add a streetcar, but we still have traffic backed up forever because you can't catch it and come in.
Well, this is just the beginning of our transit system that we hope grows within the city. So we have to start somewhere, so this is it.
And
And I don't think it'd be...
Just ask.
Yeah,
Sure.
That's a good question. And I think if there is any traffic, direct traffic reduction, it would be probably people that actually more live downtown, people that actually are close enough to walk from their home to it. But David's absolutely right. It's part of the overall system to be able to get more people around. But we hope it'll integrate really well, and that's why, like on Broadway, you'll see recommendations such as go back to 2 lanes. That way, traffic can move more freely with, and if it has to, around a streetcar. If streetcars stop to pick up passengers, people can go in the lane next to it. So that's a lot of what they look at too with traffic logistics.
There's many different other benefits of what we call a park once philosophy. So people will park in their normal parking spot, but then use the circulator to get around downtown instead of making those small trips in their car. But it's also the ability to absorb growth as your downtown develops and more residential developments happen in downtown. So that's where the...
Actually, labeling it as a circulator helps me. I just was trying to mentally vision all of this. But as a circulator, it makes more sense. Thank you.
Bob?
I had a question, and you used the term dispatch a minute ago, and that sparked the question. I'm not sure I've heard any discussion about how the system is controlled. Do you have like an air traffic controller? You've got a train traffic controller sitting somewhere that's monitoring this, or is it automatic? How's that done?
Well, the dispatch will be likely located in the maintenance facility. All the vehicles, I believe, and maybe Rick Gustafson can correct me if I'm wrong, but all the vehicles will have a GPS system, and which then communicates to a PC in the maintenance facility, and the dispatcher will understand exactly where all the cars are and can then make adjustments to the operations if needed. They'll be tracking exactly how the spacing the vehicles are and if there's an issue along the alignment and that sort of thing. So
and you had mentioned that vehicles might dwell at a terminal point for a while. I was just curious how that was controlled, as to whether you got Henry sitting down somewhere with a device telling the train to move, or if it's done automatically by computer.
It's all, by radio or cell phone communication to the operator from the dispatch, and each operator, I think it's every 2 hours, has a certain amount of break time that they're allowed to have, and so that comes into the operations plan and how that's all accomplished.
Well, this question may go beyond what stage we're at right now, but just a couple of words you used prompted the questions. I hadn't really thought about it before.
Yeah, and that's part of the operations plan that Doug and others from the team are working with Embark on.
Okay, thank you.
It's kind of that the operations group at Embark will be on an increasing involvement from this point forward until they ultimately assume operation of the system. what we like to do at this point is, get them involved in the design decisions that are being made. We don't just want to hand them the keys and go, here, run it. So there's, if you can imagine two lines where the design team will start ramping down at some point, and the operations team will start ramping up. And that's why the operations plan is in draft form right now, but there are some elements that need to be confirmed so that we make sure and get everything designed to match the planned operations.
One example of that overlap is yesterday we were talking about pay stations, and is there going to be a network connectivity at each stop that will enable payments and mobile payments, connectivity with an app, let's say. Will there be a pay station, or will it be free? Will it be on the vehicle itself? So those are questions that you kind of think, well, maybe that'll just come later, but we're actually having to talk about that now because it starts to overlap with operations. Whatever we design in this the next plan, the 60% plan, is going to start to have a direct bearing on how it can be operated. So those are things that we're starting to get smart on as well, and I'm sure maybe some questions for Council and Councilman Greenwell to consider if it's a policy issue. But I think those are going to be this summer. Some of those questions are going to have to have an answer.
Councilman Greenwell?
On page 11, where we show the portion of the route that is wireless, would we construct the route to where there's no wires at all in that blue shaded area or that blue dotted line? Or would we have the towers and the wire there, we just wouldn't utilize that? We would just disconnect?
So where the blue dashed lines are, there would be no wiring, no overhead wire or poles, nothing at all.
Okay.
You would only have the track in the street.
What if, at first the battery seems sufficient to allow the streetcar to operate without wires, but after a year, kind of like your cell phone battery, a year or two, it doesn't have the same retention power, and so it doesn't have the power to get through this unwired area. Is it too difficult at that point in time to then add wires? I mean, it's just
It would just be the capital expenditure of adding wires, but that's what we're working with with the vehicle manufacturer to understand what that battery performance would allow. And
okay.
So this is not. This is our estimate that we sent to the vehicle manufacturer. They'll be coming back with the final recommendations.
Would you ever have a situation, as we were discussing a little bit earlier, after some event, where you had an unusually large number of people wanting to ride the streetcar, and it, in a sense, overloaded the normal capacity? Would that impact the ability to go in an unwired area? What I'm saying is, let's say it's normally designed to hold, 30 people, and as a result of some event, you've got 40 people on it. Or are we going to have a strict compliance rule that only whatever the number that it's intended to hold, that's all that will ever be allowed on it?
Well, first of all, the major events that we think about are things like Chesapeake and Cox Convention Center. And so as you can see, the Bricktown, the red line around the Bricktown loop, that's a really critical recharge loop for the vehicles. Because on the normal route, they're going to be southbound on Robinson. There's regenerative braking, and so they don't lose too much battery power coming south on Robinson. They make the turn on the Sheridan, head under the bridge, and then pick up the wire at stop 21. So we have to make sure that our transformers have supply enough current so that however many vehicles are loaded on that part of the system for a special event or something like that, that they can be powered through that. Now, we actually were discussing this because it came up with the subcommittee yesterday. And one thing we think will happen is they may slow down a little bit if too many of them are loaded in that part of the system. But your question regarding when they go to battery power and how much that hurts them, the batteries, the battery running is designed for a certain amount of weight and air conditioning and everything that would draw the batteries. And when we make the turn off of Reno and head north on Hudson, that's where we really start stressing the batteries. And so, certainly if they're more fully loaded and they're headed to Midtown, it's going to put more of a pull on the batteries, as you can imagine.
But you could modify the power usage by, for example, turning off the air conditioner for a period of time?
We're not assuming that, but that would certainly help.
That is possible, but it's not, as Doug said, we're not assuming that, just knowing how hot it gets here. But the short answer is that what we're showing in this preliminary report is preliminary estimate, and that those designs will be based on maximum usage, a full train, air conditioners running, whatever other instruments need to be running, and then the analysis extends on so that we do not have that battery issue. And what we will not do is use it such that the battery gets discharged down to, I'm just coming up with a number, 10 or 20%. It will stay up in a higher range so that that battery never gets deep discharge.
Okay. One last question. If, as you're beginning to look at the utilities, for example, under Hudson, and it's determined, boy, we've got all sorts of utilities here, can we move it, say, over to Walker? And how much additional cost would it be to just push it over a block? Millions?
So you mean if utilities are in the way and to change the alignment because of that?
Yes.
Well,
just for a strip, like between 4th and Reno, instead of having it go down Hudson, push it over to Walker.
Well, right now we have a pretty good understanding of what the existing utility, conditions are or where they are. We don't quite know the depth, and that's some of the potholing we'll be doing. But we are developing a strategy, working with the public utility departments of how each of their pipes or infrastructure is addressed, and our considerations are if there is a direct impact, physical impact, then we'll be relocating a utility.
And let's just be clear that there will be utilities in the way.
Yes.
That is a given. No matter where we go, there are going to be utilities, but they are utilities that we can relocate and adjust. I think what you're asking about is if we find something that's insurmountable. We find something that absolutely can't be moved, and we've tried to do enough front-end work on this that we don't have that situation.
Or, for example, if the cost to move some of these utilities were greater than the cost to move the line over a block, we would certainly continue to analyze that.
Sure, and that's what we'll find out more as we go further along. That's part of what Doug was mentioning, of the potholing piece of it and the analysis as we continue on.
Okay, thank you.
Keep in mind, too, that we've done utility studies already, and that this line is laid out with the best intentions of taking that into consideration already. And to discuss your issue about the battery life, and if you keep running it at the longer lives, that's why we have the minimum and the maximum design length. It's up to the manufacturer to come in and tell us, well, you can't go that maximum rate that you want on 11 because you're going to excessively wear out the batteries, and it wouldn't be economical to do that. So it may be something in between there, but the minimum is what we have to require to get under the bridges. So we've taken a lot of that into consideration already, and then the manufacturer's going to have to come back and tell us what the impact is on those batteries.
And at worst, we could ask riders to get out and push it.
Well, I think in the first streetcar system, they actually brought in horses to pull them along. I don't know, we'll get that bad.
I'm hoping we don't have to ask the riders to get out and push.
Oh, no.
But it's a possibility, I agree. All right. Further questions? Discussion? Nathaniel?
I'll just say that our subcommittee was very receptive to this and very impressed with Doug and Mark's and David's work in coming up with something that is still under budget. So knock on wood, we'll keep heading that direction. So thank you for the good work on that. And our committee approved it unanimously and for approval, and so I'd make that motion today.
Been moved. You want to second that, Zane? Been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution approving this preliminary report. This is a major step in moving it forward now to the council to approve the preliminary report. Is that right, David? Yes, sir. All right. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The recommendation and the resolution is approved. Thank you for being with us today. That brings us to item 12 on the agenda, new business. Any member have new business to be considered today? Then must move to item 13. We have the subcommittee reports. I know we've heard from a lot of subcommittees already today. I'll just mention to you that the Convention Center subcommittee did meet this week and had a good meeting. We are in the middle of a process where we started with a special meeting a couple of weeks ago to look at a number of alternatives, and wintered it down to a few more that included hybrids and configurations on existing places. And this week's meeting, we did more of that, and we continue to reduce the number of sites to be studied further. And I'm sure David will give you more detail in his report if he wants to, but nothing to report other than the process is ongoing, and we now have 5 sites with configurations on those 5 sites, and move to the next step of costing those out, and we'll be looking at trying to get a recommendation in June. Any other subcommittee want to make a report? All right, David.
I just wanted to add real quick, I forgot to mention, we did ask them to move stop number 13 from Hudson and 11th to Walker and 11th, just because there's a lot more going on in that spot, and a lot more pedestrians as well. So that's the only thing I would add to our report from our committee.
Okay, great. All right, that brings us to item 14 on the agenda. David, any additional information you want to give us?
I can give you a little bit. Kim Lowe was not able to be here, and she asked me to just give you a quick report on Park. And as you know, the design of that park is underway, and coordination utilities is underway, and there's some clearing ongoing right now. They did meet last week. They met early because of some timing issues, and went over issues that had to do with potential changes to the master plan because of the potential operator, and that's all being worked on and is going very well. She apologizes that she couldn't be here today. So that's for the park. For the river, as you saw today, Whitewater is well under construction and going well. Senior wellness, the plans were approved today by this board, and upon approval of Wellness Center 1 plans by City Council, those will go out for bid, and bids will be received in about a month or so. And then Wellness Center number 2 is also underway in design. Trails and Sidewalks has a lot of projects going on. The Phase 1 Trails, Projects 1 and 2, which is the West River Trail, is under construction and nearing completion. The rain has just slowed us down considerably. Every time it dries up, it rains again. Phase 2 Trail, which is the I-44 corridor, is in design, and you should be seeing plans in the next month or so. Phase 3 Trails is in consultant selection, and the Phase 3 Trail is the trail that goes around Lake Draper, completely around that. It's about a 10-mile trail. Phase 1 Sidewalk Project 3 is under construction, nearing completion. Phase 2 Project 1 Sidewalks is under construction. Phase 2 Project 2 Sidewalks will begin construction this month. We received some bids on that. Phase 3 Sidewalks is in design, and Phase 4 Sidewalks is going through consultant selection right now. Convention Center, I don't have a whole lot more to add, Mr. Chairman, than what you reported. You covered it very well, but site evaluation is underway, and we hope to have something definitive in the next month or so. Fairgrounds, as you saw from the report today, the Expo building is under construction and going well. And And streetcar, we just saw the preliminary design is complete, and upon approval from City Council, we will begin final plans on that. And the negotiations for the streetcar is ongoing. We've had 2 face-to-face meetings with the proposer on that, and still have a few things to iron out on the contract, but feel like it's going very well, and hope that in the next 30 to 60 days have that ironed out also. So that's my report.
Any questions for David? Item 15, any comments by the board? Staff, David, anyone on the staff? Amanda, you have anything that you need to tell us we need to do differently? Oh, I feel good. That's great. Well, this is the opportunity for any citizens who are here who would like to be heard by the advisory board to come forward. Seeing none, we'll move to item 16, the item for adjournment. Any further business? Shall we adjourn? Been moved and seconded. We adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you for coming.